Sometimes I'm like really prepped, you know what I mean? You got time, you feel like I'm very calm, very relaxed, and other times it's like, oh crap, I got like 5 minutes. That's how today is. Time you feel like I'm all right. Here comes the link. And I'm going to go drop it into the schedule, as is my habit. All right, cool. That's there. All right, video lecture link is posted to the schedule. And what else? Oh, you know what I got to talk about? 4 o'clock, green light. All right. Okay, hey everybody, are we ready? We ready to rock and roll? Let's see. How's everybody doing? All right, so man, so I got like we have like 3 open topics, okay? We have you blew the command, Devin. We got like a handful of open talks. We got writing stuff, writing workshop stuff. We got orders of ignorance stuff, and we've got other, I don't know, just we've already kind of launched into some of the cool, topics. We got a hot mic. Who is? All right, we got it. So I'm trying to figure out what the best thing to hit is. I think we got to. Well, I know we talked quite a bit about writing. We did a kind of a mix on Tuesday, right? We talked about writing workshop. We talked a bit about the orders of ignorance. We talked a little bit about the events of current of recent moments. And I think that given the upcoming, we got a little more writing coming up. So let's do some writing. Let's keep working on the writing, the little writing workshop slides that I have here, okay? And then we will transition into kind of back to the orders of ignorance. I hope you're okay with this. We're just kind of like one of the things that I'm trying to do. We get good questions, we get good comments. There's something live and relevant. You know what I mean? I don't want to be such a slave to some predefined curriculum that we can't just roll with cool stuff. And then hopefully the schedule as it evolves is going to provide a little more structure to writing, to thinking, to specific topics. So, actually, first administrative question: did we do a when is good for the Devin? Are you still on? Did we do a when is good? I'm confusing this between the other class. Did we do a when is good for the watch party for the social dilemma?
Yeah. Here, do you want me to send you the links
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the results?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Send me the follow up
Okay.
so we can try to just maybe we can pick a time and kind of let everybody know. But we'll also send out an announcement, okay? Uh, and just send that directly to me, I guess. Maybe just chat that to me, Devin, if you don't mind. Oh shoot, did I lose?
Yeah, I can do that.
All right. Yeah, when I jump off this channel, I think it takes me out of the audio. I think that's a Discord thing. Anyway, send that, right? Um, Yeah. So Jenny asked a question about the due dates for the blog writing. Let me pull this up real quick. And this is the schedule right now for 305G. And if that's not, come on, that's stretching. There we go. Okay, so there were a couple of things, a couple of dumbness that I did. One is I did not have a link on reading four. I had links to reading one, two, and three. Did not have the link for reading four. My bad. I fixed that. And again, as you bump into stuff that's like broken, let me know like right away. And whoever it was, I don't remember, but whoever it was that like alerted me, like, "Yo, Dr. K, reading four," and then I could jump in and see that there was no link at all. And so that one had also been set to be noon yesterday, and and it was really everything's meant to be midnight. All deadlines on any given day are going to be midnight, which is indicated by 11:59. Okay, and so this is stuff that was due already. And then, as you'll note, we're grayed out here. But let me tell you what's coming. I'll get this fixed in the next 24 to 48 hours. Um, and what's going to come is short story number 2 is going to happen, the very short story. I'm going to do all the grading in the next, again, 24 hours on the original very short stories, which to what I was seeing look fantastic. And then starting next Thursday, we're going to start in with the larger paragraphs. Well, paragraph instead of 140 character. Okay. I know you can like barely see that over here in the gray, but that's what's going down. Okay. Um, and really, we're just going to kind of keep talking a little bit about writing. We got to get through kind of writing and orders of ignorance. They form a foundation for everything else we talk about. And we're sprinkling, but you know, the orders of ignorance and the writing stuff. Okay, that's all cooked. Let me see. So does that help, Jenny? Um, and I appreciate you double checking. And also, let me be really, really crazy clear. Some of you have had me, you already know this. Some of you have not, you don't know this. If I have been unclear or done something stupid or just, you know what I mean, just made a mistake or it's been ambiguous, you know what I mean, or in any other way unclear, let me know when you have the confusions because that's my cue to try to figure out, okay, where was the problem? Where was the ambiguity? How do I fix it? And whenever that happens, I will never, I swear to you, my solemn pledge, um, that I will never hold you accountable. If I screw up a deadline, then I'm going to be flexible on that deadline if it's really not clear. You know what I mean? I don't think it's in any way reasonable to hold myself accountable, less accountable in that respect than I'm holding you accountable when it comes to, logistical things. I hope that makes sense. And I know that's a little unusual. Maybe that's not what you're used to hearing from professors across the university, but it is truly how I try to roll. But to the extent that we lay the deadlines out and they're clear, I want to try to, we got to keep things popping and moving. And we can be more responsive, grading as well, and everything else. But if you've got particular circumstances, will you please let me know if you've got whatever it happens to be. If you have some accommodations, not a problem. I don't even need a letter. Um, if I know that you've got issues that you're working through, struggling with, family stuff, I don't care. I'll work with you. You just got to talk to me. Just got to communicate with me. Um, okay. Um, what else? So, Gabe, Cuckoo's Egg. Yeah, so there will be a date. We'll post a date. Conceptually, see the grayness out here? Conceptually, it's probably out in early March. And again, I'm going to nail these things down as we go. And then to the extent you're like, dude, you kind of like screwed me over. You went live with that with like a week to spare, and I can't plan that far in advance. True, correct. I'll work with you, okay? On all that kind of stuff. So, Cuckoo's Egg, probably early March. That sound good? So get yourself a copy. Get yourself a copy of it. Soft copy, hard copy, whatever works for you. Okay, and get a little Cliff Stall going. I think you're gonna honestly. Um, did I really say writer better? Okay, let me get back to that. Oh man. Okay, thank you. Um, hang on a second. Where is it? Better writers help each other writer better. Now I'm going to show you how I roll here, because the reality is that there's literally no reason that we can't just do these things like that. Fixed. All right. Thank you, Jaden. That's huge. I mean, really helpful, and thank you. Um, all right. That's oh, you've already started into Cooksake. That's a great report. My universal report from students, it's an old book, is that everybody likes it, unless people who don't like it never say anything. But it's pretty universal. And what I love, when I had Dr. Seth Nielsen come and speak about security, he actually mentioned, I read this book called The Cuckoo's Egg that Dr. K had me read when I was a student, and he's like a security guy, so it's pretty cool. I do think there's a lot about it too. It's not just about security and cyber espionage and all the rest of it. It's also a book about managing the gray zones and coming of age and evolution of thinking. It's really I think a great fit for the class. Um, all right, okay, cool. Let's go. I should be good with that. And then Devin's gonna. I don't want to jump over right now and burn time on the thing. Besides, if I jump out of the chat, I'll lose it. Um, and as far as the when is good, and I got to kind of calculate a little bit like what works. But in my perfect world, it's going to be this weekend. But if not, it'll be next weekend. Okay. Is there anything else housekeeping before we can go back to some smallish blogs? Let me see. Oh, so Gabe's saying, yeah, you got Audible, right? If you got a Prime membership, you get your first Audible free, and students get a 6-month free trial. So you can just totally use free trial, grab the book to listen to. Yeah, awesome. Awesome. All right. Okay, I'm going to kick in. We talked about writing quite a bit. Um, oh, can I say, I don't know if I told you about this, but I think I did tell you, right, that I got this messenger message from I think I did, from one of my former students from 10 years ago. I think I shared that with you. That was 5 days ago. Did I share it? My mind is going, my friends. My mind is gone. Did I share it with you? The problem is I talk about orders of ignorance in 3450 as well, and some of that blends together. Anyway, this was a buddy James who basically had come across the lecture in this class on the orders of ignorance, number one, and I think I did share it. And if I didn't share it here, I shared it in 3450, but just pings me out of the blue 5 days ago and just says that the orders of ignorance was literally my best takeaway from my education. That he was Googling the orders of ignorance and our lecture popped up and said that I had taught that to him, during a kind of a key kind of time in his life, and that this lesson alone changed my life, which is I feel the same way about the orders of ignorance. And it was a grad student, one of my grad students at BYU, that comes to me and has the Philip Armour book, and he's like, Chuck, you need to read this book. Boring title, ugly cover. You need to read this book. I was like, that's all I need, right? Anybody I respect who's like, Chuck, you need to read this book. I will read the book. That's kind of one of my life philosophies. Okay, it served me pretty well. And then the Orders of Ignorance kind of, I mean, I already knew about it. You know what I mean? I'd heard about stuff. You don't know what you don't know, you know, and the known unknowns, known knowns, and Donald Rumsfeld was famous for known knowns and known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and you're like, okay, you're not doing a good job of teaching that, but so the concepts were there, and then along comes Philip Armour, who's actually become a bit of a personal friend since then, which is also cool. Thank you, interwebs. Um, and it really did change the way I look at life, in a lot of really critical ways. So I hope that at least for some of you that there's going to be some of that value from the Orders of Ignorance. But that's what I want. Um, but I really hope you become better writers. I think it's going to serve your career, and I believe it's one of the things that can pop out of this thing. I know this is not an English class per se, but when I have had people tell me that they learned more in this class than they did in their like technical writing class about writing and being an effective writer. I'm not trying to be better, but I am trying to say, like better than that, than the other class. But I'm trying to say it's my goal to be seriously helpful in helping you become better writers. So let me hit a few things. Okay, a couple. I'm going to try to move faster. I move. Uh, Part of it's quarantine. You know what I mean? I don't talk to anybody all day. This is this is only the second time I've talked to somebody today, and so I'm starved for talking with people. Um, Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, and it's really an interesting phenomenon because I read Stephen King's book On Writing, and it is weirdly the only Stephen King book I've ever actually read. Isn't that funky? But it's true. But I'm like, I don't know how I gotta read a Stephen King novel sometime, sooner or later. But I figured this guy's successful. He's got to know something. Let's pick his brain and learn some things. And I loved the book. So he ran this competition that he called, Dick and Jane stories, and he had a scenario, and it was this writing sample, kind of a competition, right? And when I read the book, I actually did it my own. I didn't. It was the contest was long over, but I did my own writing just to try to have the experimentation, have the experience. So he said, not many of them were good in terms of the submissions, but that didn't surprise me. What did surprise me a little was how many could have been good if the people who wrote them had tried just a little harder or had brushed up their skills a bit, you know? And there's a moral in this, which is a huge part of becoming a good writer is actually just giving a flying rip about the quality of your writing. And I know that for some of you, it's not a forte. For some of you, it is. Um, and so you're just like, oh, this is going to be fun. I get to blog, I get to write. I already do that. This will be, I get credit for it. And some of you are just like, no. And you know who you are, and it's okay. But if you're one of the ones that are going, no, just understand that it's a rusty skill. You might not be naturally gifted at it, but everybody can do better. It can get easier for everybody. Okay. And I'll kind of meet you where you are and try to nudge that up. Okay. But the number one thing is just to not be mailing it in. If you're at least trying, there's, you've got a door open, to get better at it. And then just to reiterate, you're going to need those skills for the rest of your life. Good communication, just emails, texts, Slack channel, Discord. Your ability to communicate effectively in writing is not going to go away. And so if I can nudge you to make that a little better, that's what I'm trying to do. So that caring a little bit, okay? Ernest Hemingway, who you've probably heard of, famous, legendary, dead writer, rest in peace. I find Hemingway very depressing. Um, in order to sample Hemingway, I picked up a book of short stories of his called "The Snows of Kilimanjaro," and it was a collection of short stories. There were 10 stories in the book. In 9 of the 10 stories, the main character dies. Like, what are you doing to me, Ernest? And the tenth one, in the 10th one where the main character didn't die, he got beat up real good. So it was kind of depressing as hell. Honestly, just be forewarned if you're like getting jiggy about Ernest Hemingway based on this. The Old Man and the Sea was actually I'd read that one previously. I mean, everybody does. It's true, Braden. But I mean, not everybody dies at the end of 20 pages of short story. Um, he's still a brilliant writer, and he wrote a book called A Farewell to Arms, um, and he rewrote the last page 39 times, and then he was asked in an interview about it and why he rewrote the last page 39 times, and he said he was just getting the words right. Isn't that great? Isn't that brilliant? I was just getting the words right. Well, what does an author do? What do you do when you write? All writing is getting the words right. Okay? And then the meat mayo thing that I was talking about is just huge to this idea. So one of the things that I think happens, my own theory is that when you're not great at something, you don't know whether you could recreate that thing again. Does that make sense? Like if you think about something you've tried your hand at. There's an old story, I don't know if it's true, apocryphal perhaps, about somebody who's an art student. And at the end of the first year of art school, the dean, headmistress, whatever, you know what I mean, whoever the sort of authority figure, right? Academic authority figure was, they met with the student and said, and had them bring their portfolio of their first year in art school. And again, I don't know if this is a true story. It serves a purpose, right? And they just assume it's apocryphal or, whatever, for the sake of argument. But the dean person looks at everything, talks to the student, and then proceeds to like tear up, or put him in the fire or do whatever, all the work of the student. And the student is, of course, appalled as you would probably be, and is like, "What are you doing?" And the dean's like, "Oh, you're not going to want any of this." Again, ignore the relative pedagogy and the insensitivity, and ignore that for a second. And what the dean said in the story was, there's nothing you're going to produce as a first year art student that is going to be something that 10 years from now you're going to say, oh, that was my best work, or that was the pinnacle of something. Now, I think that strictly speaking, that's not true. You know what I mean? I think that there are, for example, amazing music and things that are written early in career, or ideas or things. So I don't think the story works perfectly pedagogically. But there is an interesting thing about our willingness to discard something. And I think that our willingness to discard something is very related to our confidence that we could do it again. Like if you write a really great song and you love the song, right? And for any of you that are musicians or whatever, right, and you tried your hand at songwriting, or you write a poem or you write whatever, you know how hard it was to generate that. It seemed like this actually works. I don't know if I can ever do this again, and you don't want to throw it away. Same thing happens with a paragraph or a sentence, right? You write this thing, and it's really remarkable how often new writers, especially, you'll try to wordsmith, you'll try to preserve that whole structure and every sentence, only just like massaging it. But what if the whole structure was dumb? right? What if everything had to change? What if you needed to just delete that entire paragraph? Deleting your way to glory, as I call it, you know? I think we're fearful because we don't know if we can do it again. And as we get better and better, we get more comfort with just like totally deleting an entire sentence. Um, my philosophy is if you write a book, consider deleting like a novel, consider deleting the first chapter. Probably you're not going to lose anything and it's going to make the book better. In every chapter, consider deleting the first page or the first paragraph. And in every paragraph, consider deleting the first sentence. Usually we just get ourselves revved up a little bit. Then we start to actually produce. And all we really need to do is go delete the part where we're revving up and start right in with the part where we're really doing it. And a lot of you will do that. Watch yourselves when it's time to do the smallest blog posts. And a lot of you will say a bunch of words because you just don't know how to start. That's all fine. Put what I call UG tags. Just put UG, in brackets or parens, and then at the end do like /UG and have the brackets at the end for to close the UG tag. And it's a part that just goes, what I really like the most about the blah 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 blah, and then then the next sentence you say an actual thing. Delete the first sentence. Start with saying the actual thing. So it just goes boom. Okay? Great designers are not afraid to throw stuff away. Great writers are not afraid to throw stuff away. To rewrite the last page of A Farewell to Arms 39 times, Hemingway had to throw away 39 full-page efforts of wrapping up this novel, which I have never read. Let me see. So Braden was mentioning a book. I don't know this book. The River by Gary Paulson. Sequel to the book The Hatchet. Anybody else, if you have like a confirm or deny on this, where a boy survives in the wild alone. In the river, he goes out with a reporter to relive the experience, but the reporter has brought items to make the experience easier. Ultimately, the boy has to carry an injured reporter to safety. Spoiler, while surviving in the wild again. Okay, that sounds really interesting and fascinating. It's maybe worth, if somebody wants to post like maybe a link to, places where that book might be acquired would be great, just kind of for everybody, as long as we got the recommendation. Okay, Justice Brandeis. When you're a judge, you write a lot. When you're an attorney, you write a lot. When you're an expert witness, you write a lot. There's no great writing, only great rewriting. Now, this is not perfectly true. There is, in fact, great writing that springs forth brilliant. It's just rare. That's all. Okay. Good. This is some good praise for the Hatchet. Okay. Can we drop a link? Somebody drop a link in there, man. My go-to is Amazon. Your go-to might be something else. Whatever your go-to is, drop that in there so everybody can just kind of have that. I'd really appreciate it. I think others would as well. And I don't even know it. I don't even know. I feel like I know the cover of the river and that I've seen it, but you know what I mean? In my mind, my part of my brain is telling me that, but I don't know if that's true. Okay, so here's the key. The reason what Brandeis is saying, there's no great writing, only great rewriting. There is great writing, and there are some who have a gift to say things or to have sentences that spring out. And as you look back on it, you're like, damn, that's really good. And it's fun to have those moments, right? But more often than not, you've got to touch it, right? And on balance, you have to rewrite. We call that rewriting editing. And the number one thing that bad writers do, the number one thing is because they don't like it, they go blah, 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 blah. They vomit on their keyboard. And then whatever words pop out, they're like, okay, send. Whoosh, and it goes and it sucks. And all you have to do was just, you ever have somebody in your life, maybe it's you, but somebody in my life that I'm thinking about that like no matter when or where or under any condition that I get a text just on my phone, a text from this person, it is just riddled with typos always. And you're kind of like, dude, maybe just read it. Before you send it, just read it once and go, you know, and edit, fix the typos. Just, you know what I mean? And it's one thing to truly not know, as your generation mostly does not know the difference between lose and loose. Grant that could just be a point of ignorance, or literacy on that one point, or it's and its, or there, or we're and, and whatever, we're and we're. Okay, that's just, I didn't know any better, but there's so many that are like crazy typos that even at a glance you would go, that auto-corrected wrong, or that. Stop, read it. That's the habit. Okay?
I
That is,
in the
yeah, go, Braden.
and checking your work is so much expected that if you turn in something that has a typo, people just assume you're an idiot.
This is where, Braden?
In the Air Force.
There you have it. The other thing, by the way, when I've been a hiring manager when I was at Novell, we were like the hottest company in the industry for a couple of years. And I was a hiring manager. And if I got and this may seem cruel or whatever, you get a lot of resumes. If I got a resume and the resume had a typo in it, I would just put it on the discard pile. Right? Also, I was hiring for software testing. So you're right, because you're like, okay, if your attention to detail is such that you can't find a typo in your own resume or have somebody else look at it who's going to help find that typo, am I going to trust you to test our software to make sure that bad software doesn't, make it out into the field? Chad, man, okay, man, more testimonies on the Hatchet. Such a good book. It inspired my brother and a friend to try and live in the wilds. And then, wait, after we were missing, you said my brother and a friend. You didn't say yourself, Chad. And then you said after we were missing. So I think you're actually part of that. You're supposed to come home after Cub Scouts. Nice. The late neighborhood's looking for you. Came down from the mountain when we saw sirens. You're a wild man, Chad. I don't even know what to say about that. That's just fantastic. I don't know, man. So does the same thing happen if you read Walden by Thoreau? The Hatchets in the River. Okay, we don't have any links. Hello, can we please, public service, please post links to The Hatchet in the River? Okay. Now here's the deal. To become a great writer, you have to. I do think it's sometimes better. Like, look, just vomit the stuff. It is as a starting point. I have no problem with just lean your arm on the keyboard and whatever pops out. Give yourself some place to start. Okay, then when you've got that place to start, you can now edit. You can look at it and then separate yourself from it. Right? Writer's block happens when you're stymied and you don't I don't know what to say. That's usually not true. Usually you don't know how to say it, and that is what has got you stuck. Okay? So what you do is say to a friend, or if you're trying to help a friend who has writer's block, you say, well, what are you trying? Ignore how to say it. Just what are you trying to say? You're always able to say it at that point. Like, well, what I'm kind of trying to say is, if you even want, you can record that on a voice memo on your phone, right? What I'm really trying to say is, I just, and then just brainstorm, then listen to it and transcribe the parts that actually work, that say what you're really talking about. Another thing I do is the UG tag, where I just go UG, and then I say the thing that I think is going to sound really bad because it feels wrong, and a closing tag. And then later on, you go back and reread it, and about half the time, all you have to do is delete the UG tags because what you wrote really wasn't that bad. You were just in a weird frame of mind at the time. Okay? So what you have to be able to do is do the writing, dump your raw whatever to the page, the metaphorical page, and then look at it again with fresh eyes. Divorce yourself from it. Separate yourself from it. It's called egoless writing. This is no longer you. It's not your soul on that page. It's just words. And they're words that are trying to serve a purpose. And sometimes we get that right, and sometimes we get that wrong. Okay? And the truth is, if in any endeavor, it takes practice, and there are always moments where you do the thing wrong, right? If you're going to learn to play golf, there are moments where you just duff it, you shank it, you slice it like crazy, or you duck hook it out of bounds. That just happens. Even great golfers, there's a moment where you duck hook it or do something you don't want to do. Well, are you going to then go say, I am that duck hook? How dare you criticize my duck hook? It's me you're talking about. No, 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 and no, it's not. Everybody, including the person who hit the duck hook. A duck hook, by the way, in golf is when you crank it and it goes, instead of going like that, it goes yoink. If you're a right-handed golfer, hard left, left-handed golfer, hard right. You know, you know what I mean? Bad writing is not who you are. Bad writing is something you currently produce. You want to get better at it, you got to look at it and say, well, that's really bad. That's really bad. And it doesn't define me in a bad, negative way. It just says that's a work product that I can make better, but I'll have to put a certain kind of effort into that in order to make that happen. I've got to be able to objectively look at my own writing and say, that sucks. That's step number one, that sucks. That's not good enough, though. That's step number one. Not I suck, but that
Dude.
sucks. Whoa, what happened? We got a hot mic? Who is that? We'll see if it happens again. I think it might be Cole. He's the only one not muted. Okay. So it startled me as well. If you saw me, I kind of like jumped. Anyway, all right. Are you tracking with me? If somebody handed you writing and it was rando writing that you didn't know where it came from, right? And you're like, tell me what you honestly think about it, and it's not me, and it's just I found this. And you could look at it, you could go, I think the writing kind of sucks. Doesn't mean the person sucks, but the writing does suck. You got to be able to look at your own writing with that same level of objectivity and say, yeah, it kind of sucks. There's no other way to get better, you know? But that's how you edit. It's how you edit, okay? And this relates to a concept that I talk about. I talk about it way more in 3450 for the handful of you that are in there, called Shiny Objects and Squeaking Doors. I'm reading it, and when I find a little nugget of writing that makes me go, it kind of makes you smile, your brain latches onto it, and you're like, that's good. I like that. And some others where you're just kind of like, it makes you kind of clunk it. It's like you hit a speed bump going too fast, plump, plump, and like the writing kind of jars you, you know what I mean? And drags you out. And by the way, I think I mentioned on Tuesday that I was reading the sci-fi novel versus 1984. I finished 1984 last night. Second time, it's a reread. First time I was 24 in 1984. I really recommend it, and it is an acceptable second book for this class. It is an acceptable book number 2. Everybody has to pick a second book. So 1984 is on the approved list, okay, to George Orwell. And I reminded myself last night that the writing is bloody brilliant. The writing is really, really brilliant. All right. If you can see that something sucks and then perceive and figure out why it sucks, then you're in a position to change it and make it not suck. That's all editing is. Literally, that's all editing, means. Yeah, Braden, no. Okay. Yeah, no, no movies, no movies. We'll watch some other movies like The Social Dilemma, but for book number 2, it's got to be a book. This we talked about. I hope that did that change anybody's life? I hope so. All right. Now, what I'm going to hit you with right now is a few quotes from this book, affectionately referred to as Strunk and White, The Elements of Style. It is not a big book. I will offer some extra credit for reading this book. The actual book is 110 pages. Okay. Now I have an older classic version. This one I don't like. I don't know. I think I'll have to see. I have an older, more classic version as well. But here's the thing about the thing about Strunk and White as extra credit. It's only 100 pages. But the deal is you cannot, thanks Devin, high school English flashback. If you read it, you cannot read more than 10 pages in one day. That's the rule. Because if you plow through it, you'll go, blah, 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 nothing is going to stick. If you read, I might even make that 5 pages, honestly. So you'd have to read it. You'd have to touch it 20 different times over the next, 3.5 months, which, I'm not sure what the right granularity is. But if you're giving it a read and it's slow enough, you digest. You know what I mean? It kind of simmers a little bit. And that's what you're going for. So I've got some quotes from Strunk and White. It's really fascinating to me how many of you, and just CS students in general, not picking on you specifically, can do a half-decent job designing software and then get into writing and just go, I don't know where to start. It's just design. It's still just design, okay? So this was Strunk and White said, a basic structural design underlies every kind of writing and every kind of engineering, frankly, right? In most cases, planning must be a deliberate prelude to writing. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sit down and draw blueprints, but it does mean that you know what it is you're trying, to do. Let me see. Oh, somebody triggered the bot? That's kind of a security breach. That's kind of a security hole. If anybody can trigger the bot. What did you do, Devin? By saying high school English flashback, you triggered the bot?
No, she just it's not a security breach. Basically, it just because high school English flashback starts with to do the italics, you have to do an asterisk. That's the command prefix. So basically, the bot was just like, "Oh, hey, that's not a command. I don't do anything with that."
Okay.
But I just changed the prefix. Here, I'll change it again.
Yeah,
yeah,
figure it out. Alex recommends
fine.
the closing bracket.
Okay, I'll do that.
Easy to write commands. All right. Okay. The first principle of composition, therefore, is to foresee or determine the shape of what is to come and pursue that shape, right? And that doesn't mean you need to, outline it and do all the other stuff. That's not what it means. It just means that you do have to have a concept. Now, what I try to do is set some expectations here. So the first 2 smallish blog posts are very short stories. You know what you're dealing with, 140 characters or fewer or less. That's the structure. So when you know that you're trying to write a story in that amount of time, that informs how you're going to go after that thing. And you're like, the big mistake I think that most, I don't know, high school, junior high, whatever, writing classes do is the giving you a minimum bound for how many words you have to have. Got to be 500 words, no fewer. And then you start padding yourself to death. And that just sucks. I don't like it. And I think it's more reasonable to be, in ranges of like, look, what is effective? There was a famous letter written by Mark Twain, the classic American author, written to a friend, and he said, I apologize for the length of my letter. If I had had more time, it would be shorter. Okay. And that is true writing principle. Okay. The notion that I got to spend more time to make it longer is teaching in my view, exactly the wrong principles. when it comes to writing. Okay. So when it's time to do the paragraphs, which will be a big chunk of the different writing assignments, they are one paragraph, one idea, one thought. That's it. It's built to just be a position statement paragraph. Say your thing, get in, hit it, be direct. That's your structure. Is that all writing? No. But it is, it is a structure, and you've got to kind of learn to be good at it. A very short story is a structure. When you do the books, not book reports, but the what I call book-inspired blog posts, you're going to write something that's a few paragraphs, and I don't even care how long it is. The classic sort of like 5-paragraph essay that some of you are like, oh, the 5. Well, it turns out that some essays are 5 paragraphs. And, the fact that that was the classic doesn't mean it isn't useful, as a way of thinking about how to do your thing. Okay? Same idea. You raise a pup tent from one sort of vision, a cathedral from another. You just have to anticipate what you're getting into. Which is still true and wise. This is one of my own favorites. It's very obscure. This is a comic strip called Gennan. It is ancient. It is old. It circulated only in the Midwest during the 70s. But it was a syndicated comic strip, and it had a lot of like regional humor, honestly. And I knew it growing up in Iowa. So then later on, when the world began to, the interwebs blew up, and I could go look at, like Powell's book in Portland or Amazon, I began looking for collections of the Gennan comics. I have now all of the Gennan collections, and again, it was very, very limited distribution, but that's what this comes from. If anybody's interested, I thought he was brilliant. Anyway, you see these two people with the crumpled papers, right? And then over here, the conclusion: writing is nature's way of letting you know how sloppy your thinking is. I think there's a lot of value and truth to that, okay? Right? Because a lot of times the reason we're struggling is because I'm just filling words, but I don't actually know what I'm thinking. And writing and thinking kind of go together. It is possible to have clear thoughts and not be able to express them, but it's common for those to go kind of, hand in hand. And as you get to be better and better at writing, I think that your thinking gets better as well. Okay, here we go. Next one. Strunk. It's an old observation that the best writers sometimes disregard the rules of rhetoric. Fair. When they do so, however, the reader will usually find in the sentence some compensating merit attained at the cost of the violation. Unless he is certain of doing as well, he'll probably do best to follow the rules. And so that's kind of a core idea here. And here's the other key that's really important. It's true of like music, and it's true of almost any field of endeavor. When you have mastered, when you know what the rule is, and then you deviate from it, you do so knowing why you're deviating from it, what you gain by doing so. And in my mind, then you've got the carte blanche to do it. But a lot of times it's an excuse for just being ignorant of just being ignorant of the rules, Let me see. Okay, yeah, so we got some bullying. Okay, yeah, so stop the cyberbullying. Stop the Discord cyberbullying. Okay, let me keep going. E.B. White. By the way, this is E.B. White of Strunk and White, is also E.B. White of Charlotte's Web. Okay, that's the author. He says he or she, I don't know if, I'm not sure, but E.B. White said that William Strunk loved the clear, the brief, the bold. So White was a student of Strunk. And then Strunk had this book that he put together, and then White jumped in to, to I don't know, modify, expand it, finish it, whatever. So make definite assertions. He scorned the vague, the tame, the colorless, the irresolute. He felt it was worse to be irresolute than to be wrong. Think about that. Think about that. Just can we get a little feedback on that? If you guys are okay jumping off your discussion of the bot. What do you think of that? It's worse, that statement. True, agree, disagree. Voice works, chat works. It's worse to be irresolute than to be wrong.
I think it depends on how wrong you are and the situation you're kind of in. Because if you're, I think the obvious example is Hitler, and he was very wrong. And
very resolute.
Thinking outside, thinking outside the box is always good. But I mean, not always, but
yeah,
depends.
No, and Gabe also wins Godwin's law for how long in any given conversation does it take before Hitler shows up. But it's an excellent point, right? Being definitive. It's not an absolute. We grant that it's not an absolute. In fact, most sort of aphorisms aren't in reality defensible in, you know what I mean, in the extreme. You know what I mean? Most sort of like platitudes are not, there's edge cases and in some cases just big chunks that it just, no, that doesn't actually work. You know what I mean? Who else? That's and what you kind of done is define the limit of the function, right? As one's position and resolution go to, the position goes to evil and resoluteness goes to infinity. What else? Who else? Okay. So Alex mentioned the John Cleese video, which I hope. By the way, are we thumbing up for John Cleese? Can we do a quick survey? Would somebody mind just throwing up a thumb up, thumb down survey for John Cleese? What you thought of it? I loved it. That's why and it's all anonymous. I mean, I can click and look, but I'm not going to. If you really didn't like it, it's fine. I thought it was amazing myself, but I love John Cleese. In fact, I read his autobiography in the last year. So Alex said that the John Cleese video kind of counters this idea. You can't be in open mode if you're too resolute and stubborn. Yes, I agree. I agree completely. It's better to be consistently, similar to my view, Braden says it's better to be consistently wrong than to be consistently inconsistent. Okay. Yeah, maybe, right? Maybe. We get really 32-0 right now on Cleese. You know how that warms my heart? That really does. But also, I think it changes. The light bulb jokes were pretty good. Yeah. I mean, that was the creativity one. Yeah, he's the guy from Monty Python. He was probably, in many respects, the, I don't know, kind of spiritual, intellectual leader of Monty Python, one of the co-founders. But, oh, excellent. Braden, did you just make that up, or is that like an actual light bulb joke that's out in the canon of light bulb jokes? Did you make it up, Braden? Come on, man. Talk to me. That's fantastic. That's actually really, really good. Yeah. You know how many software engineers it takes to change a light bulb? Anybody? Bueller? It's not possible. It's a hardware problem. So there's that. No, but here's the point. And we'll talk about this more when we get more into the orders of ignorance. The idea that we hide behind our unsureness because we're so desperately afraid of being wrong Now, and we're going to talk about cancel culture. Let's just face it. I mean, our society today just punishes the ever-loving hell out of certain kinds of being wrong. And I don't mean like extreme kinds of being wrong. I mean like mild kinds of being wrong. You know what I mean? Or we'll talk about the Overton window, which I think has shrunk into a kind of I don't even know what it is. We'll talk about it. The Overton window defines the realm of acceptable public discourse. You know what I mean? Opinions you can express and be within the bounds of, polite society, right? During McCarthy, the Overton window was shrunk. I don't know. I just realized I don't know how to conjugate the word shrink. I think it was shrunk or shrank. To exclude any discussion of the relative political merits of communism. I'm not a fan of communism, but I do believe that the relative merits, ought to be discussable, right? Relative to that. Anyway, the Overton window shrinks and says when you're outside of that, you know what I mean, that you're a something, you're negative, yeah, it is shrunken. Thank you. And okay, interesting. John just said, maybe you can only be resolute about something you have a sound argument. I think it's best to be resolute about something that you have a sound argument for, or at least it feels. But I also believe, and this is another pointer to the more discussion coming, I also believe that one ought to be able to go into a public forum with friends, associates, and express an opinion resolutely that has maybe an internally consistent argument that can be disagreed with by somebody, from a different perspective, who also has, a resolute position. And then in a perfect world, in a good world, not even just perfect, but in a good world, and I have this with a lot of friends across the spectrum. And it's fascinating to me, who are the ones that I cannot have an intelligent conversation with? And that is a really interesting dynamic. I have my own sort of statistical sample of the likelihood that I can have a rational conversation, and it is across the political spectrum. There are people that I can have a rational conversation about things we don't see eye to eye on or that I don't understand. And there are also, again, across the political spectrum, usually on the extremes, people on both sides that I cannot have a rational conversation with. So the notion that, if you're whatever you are, if you're like, you're orange and those other folks are purple, whatever, right, whatever it is, and you're like, those damn purples, they're irrational. You can't have a rational conversation with them, right? And the purples are like, the damn oranges, you can't have a rational conversation with them. Both of those positions are false, because there are people across the spectrum that you cannot have a rational conversation with. And you got to learn who they are as individuals. But there are also people across the spectrum that you can have a rational conversation with. And my kingdom for a rational conversation with people who hold positions I don't understand. You know what I mean? That is, to me, like manna. Okay. But here's another thing about this statement by Strunk, okay? Let me see, by the way, where we are at on some, right, Alex mentions woke scolding. It's a thing. Off-color. I did, by the way, when I was watching both Ken Robinson and John Cleese, and there were a couple of moments where, being 2021 or 2020, the last time I watched them, and you're kind of like, ooh, can you say that? And in some instances, maybe it's not even that cool, right? Maybe even a little offensive. But it's like, well, anyway, you know what I mean? That's a very fascinating dynamic as well, because I almost had like a cringe, like, oh no, they're dead. They're doomed. They're dead. Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 1. They're dead, Jim. They're all dead. that's kind of how I feel about everybody who like crosses the line, you know, whether their intentions were right or not or whatever, you know. Anyway, and then Cleese thought, right? Yeah, I want to talk more about Cleese, man. That's some good stuff. To not make the decision too quickly, to allow yourself to float in the ambiguity while you sort things out. Then you switch to close mode when you got to just grind it, crank it, and go. Yeah. This is awesome. Braden said actions and call to actions are good or bad. Thoughts and words should be encouraged. Agree. Devin is advocating for the flat earthers. That's Devin. We need a number on the Devins here. That's Devin, not the TA. I'm mocking you, Devin. Anyway, if I've watched the Cleese video maybe 20 times over the last 5 years. I just think it's one of those things that just really bears review again and again and again to groove in, you know, these ideas that Cleese is talking about. Yeah, pineapple does not belong on pizza. That is a thought crime. Gabe suggests that it's flat Earth and turtles all the way down. What else we got? These are good. Sorry, I'm just still scanning. Okay. All right. Yeah. But here's the thing, man. I keep interrupting myself. But there's so many. Doesn't this? I hope you have this experience. I feel like there's such a richness to what we're floating in here. You know what I mean? And my brain explodes like every Tuesday and Thursday at 4. My brain explode constantly because, you know, I don't know, man. It's just, yeah, no. So I was just harassing you, Devin, for your context-free statement about flat earthers. And I agree with you that they are very resolute. Some of them are resolute, not all of them. And they are, in fact, very wrong per my perception. And Alex suggests open forum class. Well, this is certainly one of them. And I'm probably one of the most, I don't know what I am. I'm just willing to chase a ball. You know what I mean? You throw the ball, I'm going to run and get the ball. Okay, Braden brings up Braden. Now Braden's going into the matrix. This is what I want to say. When you don't know, where is it? Is this the one that comes next? Yeah. If you don't know how to pronounce a word, say it loudly. Say it loud. Say it loudly. He said this is kind of a comical piece of advice that struck me as sound, and I still respect it. Why compound ignorance with inaudibility? Why run and hide? And you know what I love about that is if you say a word, or you say, like I just did on shrink, on conjugating shrink, you know, just like, what is that one thing? You know, like we get so terrified about being wrong. We don't want to be discovered for being wrong. So we cover it up, right? And I'm going to talk more about this on the Orders of Ignorance, but I just want to bookmark this idea that we learned in middle school that when you didn't know something that everybody else knew, that everybody would go, "Oh, you're a dummy," you know, and then they'd start whatever hurling their epithets at you, right? And we learned that in middle school. A memo to yourself in your impressionable little brain. You're a little kid. Don't ever admit to not knowing something. The mob will tear you apart. You learn that at like age 11 or something. We all learned that. Okay. And that's absurd and it's stupid. But then we become adults, and you know, and then we don't know how to be wrong. We don't know how to be wrong, and we feel awkward and we feel like a failure. Okay, so here's the paradox. Let me see. I wanted to just check real quick. Oh, nice. Alex said, this class helps you get your brains back into your skull after compiler. I am glad to be of service, man. My problem is I finish this class and my brain's just going. You know what I mean? It's always just like, and I know too much is my problem. You know, it starts to connect with all this other stuff, and I'm just like, no, 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 bring it all back, bring it all back. So I have the opposite problem. And Gabe, I don't even watch those videos because they're just so maddening. And yes, the recently former president is, shall we say, not particularly good at being wrong, while being wrong. You know what I mean? Not good as a general thing. And I'm not trying to pile on politically or anything else, but I think that he does not, in my view, manifest very well, humility or the willingness to admit that somebody, that he's wrong about something. Okay. All right, Gabe. Yeah, your wife knows something you don't. That's all I want to say. But here's what happens. Here's what I want to say about that issue. And again, there's a slide somewhere, but we'll touch it. If you have a group of people, and let's say half a dozen people standing in a circle, sitting around the living room, whatever, right, talking about stuff, and you could order the 6 people on a scale, on a spectrum or continuum of most comfortable saying I don't know, least comfortable saying I don't know. Okay? Similarly, most comfortable being wrong, never admits they're wrong. Okay? Now, and to be really clear, I'm talking about this from kind of its personality and its cognitive. I'm not there are other dynamics, and I'm just trying to separate away certain kinds of like unhealthy relationship dynamics. You know what I mean? Because there are certain kinds of codependent behaviors and relationships and personality disorders and other kinds of stuff that involve an over willingness to be wrong. You know what I mean? That the constant, almost like a social submission, if you will, that is not healthy and that partakes of other dynamics. Okay, and I'm excluding that kind of sort of clinical thing from what I'm talking about. Okay, to be really clear. But I'm just talking about, so if that's not at play, or maybe it still is at some level, right? But I've known people who were like, you know them for 40 years, never, ever admitted to being wrong, ever. And it was never their fault. You know what I mean? Now, there's some other dynamics behind that, but here's the paradox. And other people that will just readily say, does everybody know what the one thing is? And you're like, no, I don't know what that is. Right? These people. For me, in grad school, there was a guy, his name was Roger, became a really good friend. And he was a guy, this is in my master's program, and Roger was the guy who was just really unashamed. And I think it flowed from a lot of self-confidence, frankly, and a lot of, honest humility, but a lot of self-confidence. And he would just say, he would be the guy who raises his hand and say, I don't know what that means. And I remember the first time you're just like, oh, dude, Roger, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Nobody does that. What are you doing? And then, but the teacher usually appreciated it. And eventually we got to the point where there'd be something really confusing and we'd be in the classroom, right? And then the teacher would say something. None of us would know what in the crap the teacher was talking about. And then all of us would kind of we'd look at Roger, you know what I mean? Like, come on, Roger. Come on, man, raise your hand. None of us wanted to raise our hands and be like, oh, I'm stupid. Can I ask a question? Roger would just be like, like, can you explain that again? Because I don't understand it. Total confidence coupled with humility. But I think that true humility is, in fact, a byproduct of confidence. Because you don't have to, you know what I mean? You don't have to act like something. Roger was a dream, man. And we became, study buddies and really great friends. So yeah, man, and I'm with you, Devin. Roger is my idol as well. And so the point I'm getting at is you have this spectrum of people, right? From the most willing to say I don't know and the least willing to say I don't know. Here's the paradox. The person who is the most willing to say I don't know is the person most likely at any given moment to know. Tracking? And the person who is least willing or likely to say, I don't know, or to admit that they don't know something, or to admit that they're wrong. That person who is least likely is also the person who is, perhaps paradoxically, or maybe in fact logically, the one who is least likely to actually know whatever it is. It's an inverse relationship between willingness to admit you don't know and actually knowing. They go together. Unwillingness to admit that you, whatever it is, and not knowing, they go together. You with me? Does that make sense? Does that work for you? So why is that? What's the dynamic? What's the dynamic? It is ego protection, but what's the dynamic? Why is that the thing? Why is it that it might be compensation? That is, you're explaining the behavior, but I'm talking about the causal effect that the person who will never admit they don't know, in fact, knows the least. Why is that? Why
It's
does
because
that
they
play?
don't want to learn. They're
Right?
less open to learning, so they learn less.
That's right. So, and I look at it this way. Imagine that you had, right, you're not asking questions. When you say, I don't know what that is, or you stop somebody and you go, wait, I don't know, I'm not sure I know what that is, instead of acting like you do. If you act like you do and you're wrong, you never learned it. If you stop and say, whoa, I don't know what that is, right? And where this really hit home was, I remember having a poignant moment with this idea. I was meeting with attorneys. I think I was in New York, in Manhattan, and on a legal case, right? And big client, and you're the PhD, you're the white-haired PhD. And one of the professors, or I was a professor, one of the attorneys was like, okay, so Dr. Knudsen, let's tell you about the case and what we're doing with this, the technology, whatever. And then I think somebody was like, so here's kind of the critical thing. You probably know, I'm sure you know all about, whatever. You named a name, named something technological. And I was just like, okay, I don't know that I know that. I don't know it by that name. Maybe I know it by a different name. Maybe I've heard of it. I'm not sure. Why don't you explain it to me, and then I'll try to calibrate, where I'm connected with that. Well, you're the expert. You're a testifying expert. It's your title. Expert is your title. And there's an interesting gut check when you're in a group of attorneys who are looking to you to be the expert, to being willing to say, no, I don't know what that is. And I swear every single time I've ever done that in a room with attorneys, some of whom are very technically savvy, in this like intellectual property law, right? Patent law, et cetera. Every single time that's happened, the attorney, when I'm like, I'm not sure I know what that is. And then they'll do something like this. They get a little glint in their eye, a little gleam. And they're like, okay, you probably do know this, but if you don't, you're going to really love this. And then they explain, and 80% of the time, I actually do know something about it. You know what I mean? By a different name, or I didn't know that phraseology. And about 20% of the time, it's coming out of the blue. I mean, I have an ability to perceive it and understand it when they explain it, but I didn't have prior knowledge. And that 20% of the time, they're right. I'm just like, okay, that's incredibly cool. You're like, yeah. I'm going to shoot you a link to like documentation on that thing. And I'm like, okay, that's tight. And I've never had a situation where I have felt like there was like a loss of respect, or you go, I'm not sure I know what that is, and have everyone just go, oh no, we hired the wrong guy. I've never had that happen. And if anything, it generates a level of respect. And I've experienced that. Related to this, when I read an academic paper, one of the sections that I am most interested in is the threats to validity. You understand that every single research study, there exist threats to validity. Okay? Meaning that there are real reasons that lend concern about what the results are. Literally every paper I've ever published academically, there are threats to validity. And every paper ought to have a section about the threats to validity. And when I'm reading a paper and, and it's like threats to validity, and then they give you like what they call a straw man argument, a little straw dummy. You're like, I can't trust their results. But if they say this thing suffers from the potential for, selection bias, or, you know what I mean? Or a certain whatever. And you're looking at it and you're like, no, I already knew that. I could see that. They said it. Now I can actually believe them because I know that they've been introspective and thoughtful, right, about the whole thing. Are you with me on this? And if they're hand waving, or if they're like, there might be some selection bias, but we took care of that, and it's not. The section's called threats to validity, not your excuses for why pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. You know what I mean? The section is about the honest exposition of what the threats are. And then, of course, they do need to go, and here's how we approach that. But sometimes it's like they get too eager to tell you, why, don't worry about that. I'm going to say it, but don't worry. Okay. And this is why this is why the science is never settled, right? And why science is not about knowing and why it is about believing. Okay, as a scientist, can I just say this? There's a kind of a conventional sort of trope about how, religion is the domain of faith and belief, science is the domain of knowledge. Okay, bullcrap. They are both domains of faith and belief. Okay, I'm not dissing on science, right? I am both religious and scientific. I'm just saying that by religious, I mean I have a belief system. Is what I mean, more than anything. But science is about confidence. And that's why in statistics we have things called confidence intervals. They're not called knowledge intervals. And it's not binary that when you hit this threshold, now we know. There are confidence intervals that say, within this confidence, this seems to be what's going on. Okay, boom, I can roll with that. I may even have to act on that because it's the best information we've got at the time. So my best guess, do it all the time. We all operate every day on incomplete information and on lack of knowledge based upon faith. Everybody does it, and science is based on that. Okay? But it's not about, I know. I don't even know what that means, right? We gotta break out epistemology and go there. But I'm just trying to say that whenever anybody tells me, and the first time I honestly ever heard this expression was with respect to climate change, which I don't even have the expertise personally to know, right, of myself reading studies, right? But it was the only time in my life I ever heard the expression from scientists that the science was settled, because I already know that definitionally, by definition, I know that that's bullcrap. And that actually caused me to then question a lot of things about all of it. Worked against the cause, if you will, by overstating, by underrepresenting the threats to validity, and by overstating the confidence. You know what I mean? And then beating me into submission when I asked honest questions. None of it impressed me. None of it impressed. Okay, let me just say that. And I still don't even know. I mean, I'm good, on a lot of fronts. I don't know. But not knowing isn't acceptable. And asking certain questions is really not, Okay, let me see. I'm just scanning back because we're out of time. Yeah. So the paradox is the person who says, I don't know, is learning constantly. One last kind of idea here. In my circle, back when we used to have a lot more family gatherings and, a lot more face-to-face, pre-quarantine, I remember once being in a conversation with a few people, and we were debating about something, like what's the answer to the one thing, whatever it was, right? What's the velocity of a fully laden, African swallow? And we were just talking about it, and And it was kind of like one of those dumb conversations where it was like, oh, I think it's definitely, red. And someone else is like, no, I don't think so, and it's back and forth and back and forth. And I'm just like, well, I think it's chartreuse, but I'm not 100, I'm not sure. That's my best guess, you know? Oh no, definitely not chartreuse. And then I grab my phone. I'm thinking to myself, if only, if only there was some way to answer this great mystery. If only there was a device in my pocket that would answer this question, right? It's freaking 2020. So I pick up my phone, right? And I'm just like, jingy, jingy, jingy. And I'm like, and then somebody said, I swear this is a true story. Somebody in the group just goes, oh, you're looking it up to make sure you're right? And I'm like, no, I'm looking it up because I want to know what's right. And we can have a stupid debate, or we could just kind of like look it up, and then I'm going to figure some stuff out. I'll share it. And if I'm right, that's great. And if I'm not, I got to just recalibrate someplace where I was wrong. I got to upgrade this little module of knowledge that was wrong and is now right. So, I mean, that's that level of like, I don't care if I'm right. I really don't. I want to figure out what is right and get my own perception of that. That's not the same thing. So anyway, we're over time. Um, that let's call it a wrap. We're over here still in the middle of writing stuff. We're weaving in some orders of ignorance. We're weaving in the nature of knowing the miracle of being wrong. Some Strunk and White, some societal. It's all here, man. We're just like, it's in that cement truck, just kind of all mixing together. I hope it's enjoyable. I hope it's, still thought provoking. And then we need to also talk a little bit more about Ken Robinson, and how schools are killing creativity. Another one. We don't have time for that right now, but
Hey,
anyway,
Dr. K,
yeah,
I don't think we ever went over everybody's time slots for the social dilemma over the weekend.
we did send out a when is good.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
think we
we didn't
ever.
go. No, I'm going to go through it and then try to come to grips with it. And you're absolutely right. We didn't do it because I need to do a little bit of homework on it. You know what I mean? To sift out the options. So I'll
Okay,
follow
gotcha.
that up. And if it's going to happen this weekend, I'll send out an announcement. I'll put an announcement on Canvas, and I'll post to everybody on the server. I'll post
Okay,
to,
gotcha.
what's it called, Devin? Spring 2021. I'll post to Spring 2021 on the server. Cool. Okay, everybody. My back hurts. I'm tired. Everybody, good luck in all of your difficult classes. And we shall resume the cool discussion. And I'm having fun. I hope you are. And there we go. Enjoy. You're welcome, everybody. All right, I'm going to do my shutdown, and now I'm going to bail out of here. Adios, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.